Newbury and an environmental activist who's been involved in the Leith Hill, Preston New Road and Jones Hill Wood campaigns, who's been arrested many times for non-violent direct action. Close your ears, policeman. And over to Steve.
Thank you very much. Interestingly, just for whoever it is who's on the drone, they seemed a bit concerned that I was keeping warm earlier, moving my arms around. So just just to let the police know I'm perfectly fine. I've not had this much attention since I was dragged out of an 80-foot tree house 3 years ago, and beaten by the Thames Valley Police. So thank you for the care and well-being, Cumbria Police. Can I just say thank you for organising this event and everybody for coming. As the introduction explored, I'm a Green Party councillor. I sit on Newbury Town Council. Newbury famous for different elements of activism and campaigning, not least with the Newbury bypass, and just down the road as well, the Greenham Common protest from the women for the peace campaign. So a big shout out to the heritage and the shoulders of giants that I'm following. I grew up. What I'm going to talk about, can I just say, Fiona, that was really interesting hearing about what you're doing at a community level, and everything that we can do as individuals and as a community to improve our resilience and our energy efficiency and how we produce our energy. You may notice this is the best coat I own, actually. I recently started with an energy cooperative down in Basingstoke, just south of Newbury. So hearing Fiona talk about what she's been doing with the community stuff is music to my ears there. And we go out and we encourage people to do the same. And I know Donegal does a lot of, who's going to be following me, is going to be doing a lot of, does a lot of energy audits for people in and around the south and London. So with all this activism that we take part in on the front line here, it's what we do as communities that is very, very important. And while standing in protests might get the headlines, it's the hard work that the communities do, and it's the leaders such as yourselves that are here who are making that happen. So give yourselves a big round of applause. So I'm not going to talk for too long, because I know people are getting a bit cold, and we don't want the drone flying around making sure we're all right for too long. So I grew up in a West Yorkshire village called Allerton Bywater. Allerton Bywater had a colliery. It had been a coal mine for 200 years in different forms. And I grew up during the miners' strike. I was about 14, 15 at the time. And I saw firsthand how the demise of that industry ripped the very heart out of my village. A year or two later, I left home at 16 and a half and joined the RAF, became an engineer. Many of my school friends were not so fortunate, and the demise of the coal industry devastated those communities. But that was a crossroads, or a junction if you like, for the government nationally and the leaders locally. And like many of the mining communities that were devastated as a result of the closures of the mines in the 1980s and early 90s, it ripped out the very heart of that community to some extent, and they were largely forgotten and abandoned by the people who had the power and the ability to change and to build on those communities and transform them from the traditional heavy industry, coal mining, into future technologies, renewables and everything else. The very stuff that we're talking about now, and what Natalie has spoke about at great length and great detail, and very passionately about. This coal mine is an anachronism. It's something from the 19th and mid-20th century. It's not needed now. What we need, as the placards and the banners say, is we need renewable jobs, we need community-focused, sustainable living standards where people support each other in communities, they have a living wage, and as Natalie mentioned, I'm really pleased that Natalie, I'm going to come to something that towards the end. I've been to many talks where Natalie's spoken. It's the first time I've ever been on the same bill, so I'm slightly intimidated. And you know, and I'm here as the curtain raiser and the warm-up guy for Donegal, who's the a little bit of a well-renowned campaigner. So I grew up in the mining village, and I saw the impact that it had. And one of the things that came about 15-20 years later, John Prescott had his Millennium Villages, and my village, Allerton Bywater, you can look it up on the internet, there's actually a Wikipedia page for it, was one of his Millennium Villages. I think there's 5 or 6 across the country, and it was relatively successful. It built a community of housing, social and affordable, on the location of the old colliery. And it was very, very person-centric. It's not focused around the car. And I'm sure that there's lots of things that they learned from the process, and that things could have been done better in places. But as an idea, it actually had the facets of what we're trying to achieve in some of our communities now, with low traffic neighbourhoods, access for pedestrians and cyclists, and it's at the very heart. And we have community-based businesses and people, and it's transformed the village from a very depressed former coal mining village into something a little more brighter. And young professionals who live and who traditionally lived in Leeds or now work in Leeds now have settled in the former mining village, and it is a relative success. So, having heard Natalie talk about universal basic income earlier, she kind of usurped my closing joke. So I was at a talk that Natalie presented about the universal basic income in Reading, which you may remember it several years ago, and that was at the start of my political and activism journey. And just bear with me while I put my glasses on. Gentleman of a certain age. So one of the things that Natalie spoke about earlier was that it gave people choice, and it gives people agency about what they do with their working lives, and whether or not they want to engage in a full-time job, pursue the arts, etc. And I'm going to steal Natalie's punchline from that talk. And one of the things that she said, that people be able to become artists, writers, poets. And she said if one of the only negatives of the universal basic income that she could imagine in all reality was that there would be more shit poetry. So with that in mind, this morning I've penned some shit poetry. But I hope it strikes a message about what we need to do and why we need to stop this abomination of a coal mine. So forgive me for the lack of alliteration and West Cumbria, a land of coal, steel and fire, a proud history of mining, rail and wire. But times change, and so can you, to find a new path with a greener hue. West Cumbria, a land of wind and water. You notice I missed solar, right? Sun out there. A vision of sustainable power, with renewables as your friend, but not coal. To make a difference should be our goal. West Cumbria, a land of hope and skill, a future of innovation through the sheer force of will. As a community, as a whole, you can rise again without the steel-making coal. Thank you.
Steve, don't disappear. Questions for Steve?
I've got one.
Oh, right.
Do you need an agent?
Probably need a solicitor.
Yeah, my question was going to be, can you send us that so we can sort of use it? It's a good poem.
Oh, what, a poem?
Yeah.
Oh my word, my first attempt at poem, and I'm syndicating it. Yes, I certainly can. I'll give you my card later. What I would say about as well, just to continue about the theme of what communities can do and local, Natalie talked about cooperatives. I was up until recently in May a district unitary councillor, so I had a small allowance, which I live on a narrowboat, and I've just converted that to wholly electric. So it's got an electric motor, it's got a huge battery, and an increasingly large amount of solar. So I'm trying to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. But the gentleman that helped me do the boat was a member of an energy co-op, Basingstoke Energy Co-op, and I'm only wearing it not to promote the co-op as such, but because it's the best coat I own. He invited me when I lost my seat. He invited me to come and join his colleagues at the energy co-op, and we help local communities install solar and batteries and renewable wind, etc., through community energy projects. And Fiona touched on that with what she's doing with the village hall, and that's our bread and butter. We do some domestic, and we also do some industrial stuff as well. But I would encourage anybody who's looking to support the local economy to start thinking about cooperatives. You know, we're four people who own and manage our own cooperative business, and we then feed back any surplus profit into community projects, and that helps build community cohesion and community identity. So I would encourage anybody to do that. And if you've got any we can't come up and do projects up this far, it's just a little bit too far out of scope, but I can point you in the right direction in terms of Community Energy England and similar local and regional bodies. So thank you very much again, and thank you for being patient with me, and it's been great. I love this area of the world as well, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks for the poem. Have you got another song? Right, another song to get you warmed up before